Welcome everyone and thank you for joining this session, Murphy's Law of Table Topics Workshop by Table Topics champion, Brendan Murphy. My name is Izumi Yamamoto, a program lead for November. This is one of the sessions from District 101 program called Great Events. District 101 will offer many learning opportunities throughout the year, so please check out the official site to find exciting sessions. I'm just going to put it in the chat. Great. With that, I would like to introduce our Toastmaster of the day, Dennis Dawson. Dennis is a double DTM and the district champion in the evaluation, humorous, and tall tales contest. He's a past District 57 governor and has been a Toastmaster for 13 years. Please welcome Dennis.
That's such a wonderful introduction. You probably don't even need to hear about Brendan, but I am here to introduce Brendan, so I'm just going to go ahead and do so. This afternoon's guest speaker is Distinguished Toastmaster Brendan James Murphy. He has been a member of our organization for over 23 years and continues to be amazed at what Toastmasters has taught him. He has given hundreds of workshops on a variety of subjects, but since he's of Irish descent, he loves to talk mostly about talking. Now, just this morning, I presented at a Toastmasters Leadership Institute. 13 years ago, I attended my first TLI, where I saw a charming young fellow talk about the Distinguished Club program, and I thought, someday I'd like to be as good a speaker as that Brendan chap. 2 weeks later, I was. But the important thing is that he was really good. So today, he's going to talk about impromptu speaking, or as it's known in Toastmasters, table topics. Brendan is a past District 57 table topics champion, and during his experience as a table topics contestant, he came up with some suggestions for impromptu speaking that are so strong, he thinks they should be made law. Please help me welcome Brendan and his Murphy's Laws of Table Topics.
Ooh. Well, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most honored and welcome guest, and especially Dennis Dawson, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And I'm going to start with a confession. Have any of you, in addition to me, have any of you ever attended a teleconference or a conference over the phone where you said, I'm busy today, so this one, I don't have to do nothing but listen in. I'm going to eat my lunch. Well, I did that in 2005 at AT&T when we only had audio conferences. I was a new member of the team, and the team had decided to change software. And I was like, oh, okay, so I was in that honeymoon period. Everything was casual. I got invited to a 1 o'clock meeting. My last meeting went long. I had time to run down to the cafeteria and get a burrito, a delicious burrito wrapped in foil, ready to be consumed right next to my deliciously chilled Diet Coke. And I put it down on the table and got back at 12:59, dialed into this audio conference, put myself on mute and reached for my burrito. And immediately, I got a question. I'm thinking, wait, this doesn't make sense. I'm here to eat my lunch and say nothing. But because I represented my team with this organization, they started asking me questions. So I put my burrito down, clicked off of mute, and answered a question. I thought, okay, job. And I thought, okay, now, and I was ready to click back on mute. They answered a follow-up question. So I told them a little story of what I was doing right now. And they said, oh, thank you. I said, thank you. That's my cue. I reached for my burrito with one hand and the mute button with the other, getting ready to consume my oh so good smelling burrito. They asked another question. I put down my beautiful burrito, moved my hand away from the mute button, and answered question after question, Sometimes I gave them some information. Sometimes I told them stories about what had happened in the past and what I had done in the past. And again, they asked follow-up after follow-up after follow-up. And all of a sudden, it's 2:00. I had answered all their questions, and they were happy. They were content. And two things I realized at that time. One, Toastmasters is awesome, especially how they train us with table topics, this amazing impromptu speaking skill. And the second thing is burritos don't last very long. My soggy burrito had to be thrown out. That lesson was worth it, and that's why I'm here today, because I am here to issue a challenge to you to take table topics when you answer them in your club, take them seriously, and challenge yourself to make that experience more and more difficult for you every time you do it. And in doing so, you will fail in Toastmasters, but my hope is that you will succeed outside of Toastmasters, like that 1-hour meeting where I wasn't prepared to speak at all. Because of my 8 years of being a Toastmaster and practicing table topics, I was able to smoothly answer everything in an impromptu manner. And it was a powerful experience for me, and I'm hoping you'll get those powerful experiences outside of Toastmasters by accepting the challenge of these Murphy's Laws today. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Murphy's Law of Table Topics number 1, and then we're going to give a chance for you to practice. Dennis is going to be picking some of my victims, so please send Dennis some Amazon gift cards if you don't want to be picked on during these practice sessions. And then I'm going to introduce our second law. And once again, we're going to give you a chance to practice the law there. We'll just to get a few people and doing some interaction and hope that that helps enlighten what I'm trying to do. I'm going to share on the third law. And because Dennis did such a great job of introducing me today, I am going to give you all a bonus law, and you can thank Dennis for doing such a great job. So I'm going to give you that bonus law. We'll do a quick summary, and then after that, I'm going to turn it over to Dennis for 15 minutes of Q&A. So please keep your questions, write them down, jot them down, and we'll get to them in the Q&A. And it's my commitment to you that if we don't answer all your questions, let Gavin give you my email and you can ask me follow-up questions, because I not only want to challenge you to follow Murphy's Law, I want to encourage you to follow Murphy's Law. And every time you get a chance to respond to table topics, challenge yourself to make it a difficult experience. So outside, everything is easy. All right, ready for law number 1? All right, since you're on mute, I'll assume that's a yes. The first law is that silence sucks. We live in a world where there's noise everywhere. There's constant interaction from your phone, from your laptop, to your tablet, to your mainframe computer, wherever it's all coming. People are calling and texting all the time. Even when we're isolated and quarantined, there is so much noise in our lives that we're uncomfortable with silence. Silence is challenging. So when you get a table topics in Toastmasters, do you go, let me think about that? And do you just pause for 10, 15, 30 seconds of thinking about your response, and then you jump right in after 30 seconds? Don't do that. You can do that in Toastmasters. There's nothing wrong with it according to Toastmasters practice. But I want to challenge you to do not leave dead air. No dead air ever. Silence sucks. So how do you get around silence and yet still present a good table topics response? You use the Toastmasters magic words right away. In Toastmasters, we have this formal way of accepting a transfer of power from the Toastmaster or the Table Topics Master to the Table Topics Respondent. We used to shake hands, don't do that anymore, but we still have a verbal indication of the transfer of power. And it is, in a sense, a polite nothing, but it is so powerful for you as a Table Topics Respondent. And that is these words: Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most honored and welcome guests. Whoa, yay! If you learn nothing out, learn how to appreciate this phrase, which most people think, oh God, I don't want to say that again. No, use this to your advantage. Use this to your advantage because silence sucks, no dead air. Somebody asks you a Table Topics, boom, you start with Mr. or Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most honored and welcome guest. You get that ready to go. It's always ready to go. And it's unconscious for you. It has to be unconscious. You have to practice. Make sure it's smooth for you because you're going to want to think while you're uttering that. So it's just going to come out there. It's very simple, but you'd be surprised if you don't practice it. It won't be part of your toolbox for answering without silence. So have that in an unconscious manner. Use enhanced pausing, not in the words themselves, but between the words. There's spaces there for you to add an extended pause to extend this time. So while you're doing this unconsciously, you're consciously thinking how you're going to respond to the table topics. Unconscious, a little bit longer to spread out that time for thinking. And I would say you shoot to have this for 4 to 6 seconds. And during that time, you are prepping your table topics response. It's got to be unconscious. Use the pausing well, and then do it for 4 to 6 seconds. It's very simple, but this is a powerful tool for you. If you start like this, you have a chance to put together the table topics response and take off right after that. What we're going to do now is give us a chance to practice some law. And I'm going to do 2 things with the victims that Dennis will provide me. First, we're going to ask you to use the magic words, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most honored and welcome guests. And we're going to time that. I'm going to time that for you. And after you do that, we'll give you a timing. And then I'm going to ask you for something else. And that is, what kind of magic words would you substitute for the Toastmaster words, which you can't use outside of Toastmasters? But let's say you're in a meeting and somebody asks you for an impromptu response. How will you start responding to that response, even though you don't have that Mr. Toastmasters phrase? Something to get you thinking, because silence sucks. You want to confidently dive in and start speaking right away whenever you get a chance to speak in an impromptu manner. All right, now Dennis has kindly offered to help me today. I'm going to get my stopwatch ready to go. Dennis Dawson, do you have the first victim for me?
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome and honored guests, I have in fact chosen the victim for this particular exercise. I figure that anybody who's got their video on is ready to speak at a moment's notice.
Nice.
And therefore, I'm going to choose Tong Yin as your first victim.
Tong, can we hear you, Tong? Can we do an audio check real quickly?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, fantastic. All right, Tong. So when I say go, give me that extended, smoothly extended timing of your magic words. On your marks, get set, go.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and the honored and welcome guests.
Nice. That was 6 seconds And another almost half of a second there. Nicely done, Tom. Fantastic. Now, did you feel comfortable doing that, or was that awkward for you?
I felt comfortable.
Good, good. So you're on your way to do it in an unconscious manner. Now, let's say you're at work, Tom. How would you respond in a meeting where your boss says, Tom, can you tell us about this? And you're like, I'm not ready to speak. How would you start that while you're thinking? How would you respond to your boss?
I probably will say, thank you, Jen. Thank you for bringing that up. Or thank you for introducing me. Or thank you for a good introduction, things like that.
Nice. Very good. Brilliant. Brilliant there. I'm learning already. Yeah. Once again, that thank you as a polite nothing. Yeah. Thank you for burdening me with that impromptu topic. No, you get that right there. And that's very good. All right. Good first guess. Excellent selection there. Thank you, Tong. And thank you, Dennis, for that first victim. Can I get a second victim from you, Mr. Dawson, sir?
You can, in fact, get a second victim from me because I'm selecting the second victim even as I speak. I'm looking, I see the faces. I know that Shabir Latif would like to participate in this exercise.
Well, Shabir, congratulations are being selected by Dennis Dawson. That alone is an honor unto itself. Now, Shabir, can we do a quick audio check with you?
Yes, I am available.
Very good.
Thank you for asking.
Sounded very good. All right, Shabir. Once again, on the when I say ready, set, go, I'm going to time you for how long you use your magic words for. Are you ready?
Yes.
On your marks, get set, go.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and honored and welcome guests.
Woohoo! Nicely done. At precisely 6 minutes, 6 seconds and 2/100ths of a response. That's perfect duration there. And Sharif, did you have a smooth time doing that, or was that a stretch for you to?
No, I was conscious, but it wasn't stretch. I was comfortable.
Good, good, and we hope eventually to get it to you in that unconscious state. Now, for a substitution at a work meeting or an event where somebody asks impromptu response, how would you do that outside of a Toastmasters work?
So I'm retired, but I have a family gathering.
Nice.
So, hello, my loving wife, my loving brother, and dearest son.
Awesome, awesome. You've got it down. Fantastic. All right, Dennis, you have once again chosen wisely, and that is no surprise, but can you do it for a third time? May I have a third victim, please?
I didn't know you'd want three. Darlene Wong.
Darlene. Oh, you too are honored to be our first of 3 victims. So, Darlene, can we do a quick audio check with you?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, certainly can. So, Darlene, as usual, we're going to ask for the magic words, and I'm going to time you when I say ready, set, go. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, ready, set, and go.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and most honored and welcome guests.
Great. Now that was 4.5 seconds. Did that feel like a stretch to you, or was that just like, you're just doing it?
It did feel like a bit of a stretch, but obviously I need to stretch it a little bit more. So yeah, more pausing.
Yeah, and that's good. And once again, you don't go, Mr. Toastmaster. No, you say Mr. Toastmaster, and you put a pause, and then you add it in there in between the words. So that's great stuff. But once again, 4 seconds might be all you need anyway, but getting more comfortable with that, extending it, I think is an advantage. And then the same question for you. You're at a work situation and you can't use Mr. Toastmaster. What would you use for your magic words there?
Usually what I actually use in real life is what we did for our sound check. So I it is partially for the purpose of capturing my thoughts, but also to make sure that people can hear me. So I do say, hello, are you guys able to hear me? But more to your question, I would say something like, thank you for bringing up the question, and here's the response.
You got that. Fantastic. That is nicely done, Darlene. Thank you, because I've learned something right now in our Zoom world. Using that audio check, visual check kind of language is your magic words, in addition to what you can add on top of that. But that is brilliant. So Dennis Dawson, please give her another 500,000 points. Brilliant response. Nicely done. So much, Darlene. All right. Thank you to my 3 first volunteers. Really appreciate that. And we're going to go on to our second law, which is make a sandwich or tell a story. During those 4 to 6 seconds, I'm going to ask you to make a decision. How will you respond to that table topics? Will you make a sandwich? And a sandwich, in my understanding, comes from my 9th grade English class, where we learned those 500-word essay responses. And my teacher, Mr. Rich, would say, it's like making a sandwich. You have your top piece of bread is your intro. You have some lettuce, some meat, a tomato, 3 paragraphs in the center, and then the other piece of bread is the conclusion. So an expository response is a sandwich. And that's how I use that term. And I'm asking for that quick thing. Do you want to respond to the table topics with a kind of expository response, or do you want to tell a story? Make that decision quick, and then think of how you're going to start it. This is all going to take place in those 4 to 6 seconds. So you have to limit your choice to either a sandwich or tell a story. So a sandwich involves an introduction, where you clearly state what you're going to talk about and responding to the table topics. And then you have to have how many points, Dennis Dawson? I left this blank just for you. How many points do you need? Yes, that's 3. He held up three fingers. You need 3 points. Some people say 2 points. No, this is a mini speech. And because it's a mini speech, if you choose to make a sandwich, you have to have 3 points at a minimum. You probably don't have time for more, but you need those 3 points. And then you get to a conclusion. This is a speech, but one of the things that you will not do in a table topics response is provide a summary. You don't have time for that, and it's really not needed. If they've already forgot your 3 points in 90 seconds, well, then they probably a summary is not going to help anyway. So do the introduction to 3 points and the conclusion, and then you are done. And ways that I prep for sandwich making in an impromptu manner, because you don't know what you're going to get asked, read everything you can. And I'm a big fan of newspapers. I read physical newspapers. I subscribe to the Wall Street Journal, which its news section is known to be highly accurate because business people read it. Money's involved. It needs to be accurate. So it's a great way to learn. And the headlines are enlightening for me when I can't read the whole thing. I also read the San Francisco Chronicle because my dad used to work for that newspaper. So I try to get that variety of sources and learn different things through reading. Of course, people learn a lot online. There's plenty to read out there. Listen to different sources. Occasionally listen to news radio. One of my stations is our local news station, KCBS, all 24/7 news talk. But they don't even just have the news, they'll have analysis, cooking, astrology, all this stuff comes in at different times as they fill the time, and you learn things that you might be able to use as part of those 3 points. And then explore. One of the advantages of Toastmasters is you get different people coming in, sharing their story, and you learn about things that you would not otherwise know to ask about. Once you know the questions to ask, you can find it on the internet or wherever. There's a variety of ways to find information. But if you don't know to ask the question, that's the key. So you have your reading habits, your listening habits, just like I do. But what about the things you're missing? And they could possibly be part of a sandwich response. So prepare for all those topics as much as possible, because you'll never know when some of the stuff you've read, you've listened, or you explored will be that third point. You got the first 2 points, no problem, but that third point, you get it from this preparation. And the other option, of course, is to tell a story. Now, with a story, the structure is clear. There's a beginning, once upon a time, there's a middle, something happened, and then there's an ending. However you phrase it, make sure you get a start, end to end, make sure that it's clear, and you got to move quickly. Once again, you're thinking 1 to 2 minutes, shoot for 90 seconds to get there. And one thing I would say, in your telling a story, sometimes people in longer stories will use kind of flashback technique. Can't do that here. You don't have time for that. And then in prepping for a story, think of times of your own personal stories where you had a strong emotional response, happy, sad, mad, glad, silly, whatever. And you actually write out those stories in 90-second versions. 90 seconds is about 180 words. And you make sure that that's there and refined as much as possible. And then, if at all possible, add humor, because humorous storytelling is extremely powerful. So add that humor to those stories and make it ready to go. And then when an appropriate table topics comes up, you can connect that story to the table topics, and it's refined and it's there for you. All right, so make a sandwich or tell a story. Now, for this exercise period, I'm going to ask you to use your magic words. I'm not going to time you, but just want whoever you are to just use those magic words. And while you're doing that, immediately yell sandwich or story. I'm not asking for a table topics response. We don't have time for a full table topics response, but I'm going to ask you to say, I'm going to respond with a sandwich, an expository response with those 3 points, or I'm going to tell a story. And then we're just going to ask you to explain your choice. So we will move along quickly to that. And I, once again, rely on my beautiful assistant, Dennis Dawson, to choose my first victim of the day to respond to this table topics, but not with a full 1 to 2 minute response. Just use your magic words, then yell sandwich or story and explain your choice. Who is my first victim? Dennis Dawson.
Just to clarify, is it okay if they say sandwich?
Yes.
Just wanted to
Oh,
see if
God.
that would be acceptable.
Oh, geez. Thanks, spell check. Okay, please. I put that in there just to make sure people would catch it. Anyway, so who is my first victim?
I'm going to choose someone because I recognize him from last night. I believe he's an experienced Toastmaster and he has a charming accent. I would like to call on JL, otherwise known as Jim.
Jim. Fantastic. And Jim, just doing a quick audio check with you.
How do you read?
Yeah, very nicely done, sir. So I'm going to give you your table topic and ask you to respond to it. There's an easy one, but once again, not looking for the 1 to 2 minute response. I just say the magic words, and during that time, make the decision how you would respond. Would it be a sandwich or a story? And then we'll explain your choice. Jim, what do you like about Toastmasters?
Mr. Chairman, fellow attendees, and everyone who has thought about the same question. Story.
Story. Fantastic. And why would you choose to make it a story there?
I have a story about why I joined Toastmasters.
Nice.
In my mind.
Yeah, that's great. Fantastic. Very nicely done. And that was our first victim. Dennis, once again, you did choose wisely. Once again, a big hand for Jim getting us started. And I have 2 more victims I'd like to select, but the first one is going to be
You, Daniel, you.
Daniel, you. Can you do a quick sound check with us?
Hi.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for being voluntold And I'm going to give you a table topics. And once again, just ask you to use magic words. And while you're doing that, choose sandwich or story, and we'll talk about your choice. COVID-19.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Masters. Mr. Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters. Sandwich.
Sandwich, fantastic. And why would you go for a sandwich?
I could have gone either way, I suppose. But COVID-19 sort of invokes sort of my analytics side of things. Maybe start talking about some of the statistics, and maybe even cite some of the news stories that I've told. So maybe it could be a mix of sandwich and story.
Gotcha. Good, good. Thank you for that explanation, and thank you for jumping in. Nicely done. 500,000 points for that man as well, sir. And finally, Mr. Dawson, can I get the third victim? Now, this victim is going to have to be extra special because I am going to share the table topics subject that stumped me the first time I competed in table topics. So,
I just want to point out that Daniel did a very smart thing where he pretended that he messed up the magic words, giving him extra time to speak.
You're right, sir. You're right, sir.
Brilliant.
An extra 100,000 points for that young man. Good point. From
So if this is really difficult, I have to pick on Satish Shenoy.
Hello.
Satish, okay, we can hear you perfectly, sir. And this is a challenging one, but once again, I'm not asking for the response. Just were you going to make it a sandwich or a story? And to explain your choice and make that decision while you're using your magic words. So Satish, change is the only constant.
Thank you, Table Topics Master, fellow Toastmasters, and honored and welcome guests, and all the citizens assembled here. I would choose a story.
Nice. And why would you go with a story? You've got this philosophical concept that you jump into a story. I think that's great. What made you think of a story there?
I have to say, Brandon, I could go with either one, but I have been around the block a few times, working in the corporate world and also my own journey in Toastmasters. So think about something like Pathways. What did that do to us? It's changing, right? And think about work. There's always change. COVID could be a great example of how you can, change can happen all the time, and you have to be ready for it. So
that's nice.
That's it.
That's very good. And once again, either storytelling or sandwich making is a powerful skill that you will use in the real world. I will always encourage people to tell stories because people remember stories. They forget words, but they remember stories. So if you can tell a story, by all means do so. If you can't, be prepared to give a great expository response. Please remember, this is a mini speech. It's not just a simple, oh, here's 3 factoids and you're shutting up. You look at commercials online or on TV, they share so much information in 15 or 30 seconds, but they're highly refined and they're not a mini speech. You're going for that mini speech, whether it's a story or a sandwich. You're ready to go if you accept the challenge. Yeah.
May I suggest one thing that I thought of as you were describing this, why I would pick a story versus the sandwich?
Sure.
If the question brought about an emotional response in you of some kind, maybe it is something that happened to you, something that happened to a friend, a story you heard about in newspapers or wherever it is, that response that you got, that will likely direct you towards a story.
Yes.
Potentially.
Yes.
Versus a sandwich.
Yeah, that's right.
That's how I was thinking about it.
And definitely, and the audience responds to that true emotion within you. So you have to truly be in that story and feeling even though it happened 20 years ago.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
So with that, we're going to go on to our third law, and that is to connect. Always connect. and make sure that you connect with the table topics. This comes from Ian Forster with the book Howard's End. And it was a book I was supposed to read as an English major, and I never quite had the time to do it. And it was the night before the final exam, and I opened up the book and I saw this on the opening pages, only connect. And I realized I didn't need to read the book. I never have read the book to this day, because that's what we're supposed to do as humans, connect. And in the same way, it goes with table topics. So when somebody gives you a table topics and you're going to respond with story or a sandwich, please remember to regurgitate keywords back to the table topics questioner or the audience, so they know that you are connecting. Change is the only constant. And I realized the way to respond to that after I had lost the table topics contest was change was the only constant when I was a young kid, because that's all my brothers would let me keep. And so I told a story about my brothers and me, and them being the older brothers beating up on me and taking my cash, but they gave me the pennies. So connect, however, whether it's a story or not, you need to express that connection with those keywords. So the bonus law today is don't fudge it when they judge it. And the idea is you are giving a speech. It may be impromptu, but it is a speech. So the judging form for table topics by Toastmasters International, and you can download it for free at toastmasters.org, is out there. And if you're going to enter in a contest, I really want you to read that, download it. But even if you don't plan to compete in table topics, read that form anyway, because it's distilled wisdom on what is required for an impromptu speech event. And so it will challenge you even further than the 3 laws I've already presented to you. Get into that form and realize, yep, I need to give a smooth speech as if it were prepared. As if it were prepared. That's the quality you're going for in impromptu speaking. And that's why table topics is something you practice week in and week out. So the areas that you're looking at on the form are development, and that's 30 points, right? That's, is there an opening, body, and close? That's simple organization. And is there a smoothness between? And this is where the art comes in. When you might have story in your mind, you have to have a smooth transition from your magic words into the story. And after the story is in, you have to smoothly reconnect the story with the question that you received. So that smoothness, very important. Once again, this is impromptu speaking, not prepared speaking, but in prepared speaking, you would need similar qualities as well. Then for effectiveness, 25 points, right? There's logic. Is there directness and enthusiasm from the speaker? And is there an achievement of purpose? And how does the audience respond? So that's what the judges are looking for in a contest. But on the flip side, outside of Toastmasters, people are looking for the same things. And as you practice and challenge yourselves to really get into table topics in Toastmasters, this will make you better outside of Toastmasters. And then your physical communication and how you look, what's your appearance? I try to wear a collared shirt every day for work, and sometimes for Toastmasters, I will put on a tie, even on Zoom. And then your body language. In Zoom, it's different than on the stage, but you have to be aware that body language is very important. And then, of course, the speaking area. Our speaking area is very small, as you know right now, but in contest, the speaking area is limited on purpose. They don't want people jumping off the stage and running up through the audience. And next is your voice, of course, and how flexible it is, rate, pitch, volume, all that. And can you truly hear it? Can everybody hear that? Zoom is different, but you would use the same type of techniques in Zoom or as on stage. And this last one is important as well. And it's also 15 points, and that's the language. Is it appropriate to the speech? Do the characters speak as they have been described in your table topics response? Does it make sense? And is it appropriate to the audience? In general, in Toastmasters, we're looking for something that would be appropriate in a business setting. So think of that in terms of your language. I've been a judge in table topics contest, and people use naughty words, right? That person obviously loses on my ballot right away because it's inappropriate. And then we are challenged to use correct grammar, pronunciation, and word choice. And this is important because you want to be able to avoid distraction, where they say, what did he say? What did she say? You know, and the grammar, did it make sense? You don't want that to interfere with your message. If it isn't the best grammar around, or the pronunciation is good enough and the word choice is fine, that's okay. It doesn't have to be this high elevated written style language, but it has to avoid distracting from your message. So don't fudge it when they judge it. Follow that judge's guideline and all those aspects, and knowing it's very similar to what is required of you in a regular prepared speech. So be aware of that as well. All right, so we've gone through 4 laws. Now my chance to quickly summarize and give you a final charge here. So impromptu speaking is good for you. You're going to need it outside of Toastmasters. So inside of Toastmasters, please, please, please accept the challenge from Murphy's Laws or Dennis's Laws or Daniel's Law. It doesn't matter. Accept those challenge. Maybe you create your own laws, but accept those challenge to make every time you do a table topics difficult. There's people in your club who will go, well, Mr. Toastmaster, I don't like that topic, so I'm going to respond to the previous topic. No, don't do that. You're only cheating yourself. Or people come and they think for a minute and they've got it all in their head, and then they finally speak, and by that time everybody's like sleeping in the audience. Don't do that to yourself. Take the risk of following these challenges and take the risk of challenging yourself to make every table topics experience extremely difficult for you within the club. And I encourage you to fail and flail within Toastmasters so you get better outside of Toastmasters. Don't think it's silence while your audience is waiting. It's just a lack of confidence in what is communicated, and it interferes with you. People say, yeah, that was a good response, but man, it took them forever to get going. So you have the magic words, and I really appreciate the brilliance of the magic words outside of Toastmasters that our victims, our volunteers are able to share. So be aware of that. You need those magic words in Toastmasters, and you got to be prepared outside of Toastmasters. I love the idea of using Zoom. Can we do a quick audio check while you're thinking? So very nicely done. Use exposition. In other words, make a sandwich when appropriate, or even better, tell a story. And there'll be times when you just can't tell a story in Toastmasters or in your work environment, and that's fine. You have to do an exposition then, and you want to practice those in table topics when appropriate. But if you can tell a story, do it. Storytelling, so powerful. And the advantage of storytelling is you have your set of stories that you can share and connect through the keywords to the discussion. Now, tie your response with those keywords and make sure that you connect. Always connect, always connect. And then compete if you can in these upcoming spring contests. Compete. And even if you lose in the club or you lose at the area, you're going to learn. It's a different type of experience, and you want to make sure your response is of prepared speech quality when you speak in an impromptu manner. With that, it is time to grill me, and I'm going to turn control over to our distinguished and most excellent Toastmaster, Dennis Dawson. Mr. Dawson?
If you have questions, feel free to type them into chat, or you can raise your hand visually and I'll take you there. First question is from Raphael. He asks, is pronunciation important when you're using the sandwich method?
Especially, you don't want sand in your mouth to interfere with pronunciation. And yes, indeed. Just a comment for people who respond in English whose original language is not English. What I find in these 23 years of Toastmasters is accented English has an attractive quality to it because it is different from what I normally hear day in and day out. So it causes interest for me as a listener. And pronunciation may be difficult, but the real key is, can I understand what's going on? So use pausing in those table topics response when you feel like, oh, maybe I didn't pronounce it correctly. Let me catch up to it and say, oh, that's what he meant. Or now I understand what she's saying. So you can use those pauses along the way. But if you do have an accent with English, know that you have an advantage over other English speakers who are used to speaking that kind of standard English, in this country or wherever, and that is an advantage. So take advantage of that, use that, and just do a little more pausing in your table topics response.
Okay, Shabir, you had a question.
Yeah, I was starting to type, but that's okay. What do you think about, does the speech has to be realistic? Because I'm an improv master, and a lot of times we practice just making it up as long as it answers the question.
Yeah, so in terms of table topics, think about what would happen outside of Toastmasters. So within Toastmasters, you want to challenge yourself to be prepared for the outside world. If you want to tell a crazy story and people get the sense that it's a crazy story and it connects with those keywords in the table topics, that's perfectly fine. And I think that would be fun. Let's say, when you meet with your family and you tell a crazy story and they go, Dad, he's a character, right? Those are fun things, and that's okay. That is perfectly okay. But just be aware how silly or crazy you get. Is it something that you could do outside of Toastmasters, not just within Toastmasters?
Jim asks a question here. Imagine the day when half of the people use the same preamble. Isn't that bad?
So this is something that is near and dear to my heart, the idea of a polite nothing. A polite nothing is extremely powerful in our world. Hi, how are you? How you feeling today? Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most honored and welcome guests. Those are connectors, and they substitute for a broader expression of connection and respect and appreciation without having to say that. So the polite nothings are important, and please use them as much as possible, not just in Toastmasters, but outside of Toastmasters. The challenge here with Silence Sucks isn't that we want you to use the magic words. We want you to leverage the magic words. There's table topics respondents who are so good, they can just jump right in, and oftentimes they won't get dinged for not using the magic words. But I would really suggest to use that magic words and then use the time within the magic words to do that. And one reason I, in general, use the magic words in my prepared speeches as well as impromptu is because I want to communicate that respect to the leader, the Toastmaster, the MC, and then express my respect in that very short way to the audience. Mr. Dawson.
All right. Now, Satish just can't wait to ask a question. However, yes, I will let him ask the question. Satish, please ask the question that you can't wait to ask.
Thank you, Dennis. I was getting a little tired of raising my hand, so that's why I put that in. All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Brendan, this was really good. I do have, I wonder about the techniques and if there are more techniques. Let me explain in a short sentence here. Things like agreeing and disagreeing, or pros and cons, or cause and effect, or there's a method that I keep in mind called PREP, which is point, reason, example, and point, or past, present, and future. I mean, these are all things you could apply to respond to a question. Would you see these as different techniques? How do you react to what I'm saying?
Yeah. So now I'm really upset because now it's Satish's laws versus Murphy's laws, right? And this is great because what you want to do with that is challenge yourself to take those table topics to the next level with these ideas on how you can do this prep methodology. I think it's fantastic. I want to just quickly step back and talk about the philosophy of a paragraph. When I learned English in the Stone Ages, we talked about grammar and sentences, and then we talked about essays with 5 paragraphs, an intro, a conclusion, and 3 points in between. But we didn't talk about how to construct those paragraphs. And some of the stuff that you just mentioned applies to expository speaking and those 3 points you're doing there. How do you express those 3 points in such a way that's powerful and is clear in what you're saying? And I think that's something we can always grow in. So I guess, Gavin, the next session is going to be Gavin's laws of table topics and reasoning, and that's okay, and that's good. And so once again, thank you. I learned and I'm challenged by this, and I hope you're challenged as well. Good stuff. Mr. Dawson.
Kieran suggests an interesting gambit here. How about if we say, let me repeat the question for those who missed it outside of Toastmasters? You can't really do that in a table topic, but what do you think about that in a business meeting?
I do not like that because the message I hear when that is like, dang, Murphy, you're speaking like a garbled old man, right? And it says, I wasn't listening. It's like, oh, hey, yeah, okay, sorry, I was multitasking. Let me finish my text, and then I'll get back to you. If at all possible, don't do that from Murphy's Law's perspective. If it is necessary, then you have to do it. That's okay. You want to make sure you're responding to the question. And if you say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that, or my Zoom internet connection was off, whatever you need to get the accurate question, I totally agree with. But as a practice, I would say don't ask for a repetition of the question.
Izumi asks a question, I'll paraphrase it. I know that I've gotten up and said, Mr. Toastmaster, oh my God, what am I going to say? Fellow Toastmasters, I have no idea where I'm going with. And most honored and welcome guests. Oh God, I have nothing to say.
You have nothing to say, and then you go on, and then there's other fillers that you can say, yeah, that is an interesting question, and then you connect to that. One of the things I learned in English Comp at Foothill Junior College, woohoo, best junior college in the United States, from one of my professors was, when you write an essay, always take the question and turn it around and put it in there. So indeed, change is the only constant, and then you take off and explain it. If you're in that case, you have to go to expository. You have to go and search and give yourself time to create those 3 points. You just turn the question around and do this best as you can. To connect a story, you have to be very confident that you have that connection, and then use those keywords appropriately. Thank you, Izumi.
Yeah, Brendan, I have an impish sense of humor.
Yes.
And so thinking in terms of a contest, when I am asked a question, I almost always, as a knee-jerk reaction, think that I'll turn it on its head. Whatever is the expected answer, I'm going to make a twist. For a contest, do you think that Toastmasters judges would prefer that you answer the question the way they expect it, or they appreciate it when you turn it the other direction.
Thank you. Well, once again, if you, ladies and gentlemen, don't know Dennis Dawson, he is highly intelligent and a great language master himself. But unlike me, he's never won the Table Topics contest for the reason that he just talked about. He got a little too clever. And in an expanded writing, and Dennis also writes books, right? That kind of cleverness works because the audience can move along slowly. In 1 to 2 minutes, that might confuse people. So it's a gamble. He's taking a gamble for himself, and he can get great humor with that gamble by turning things on the heads. But it's most likely better in a prepared speech than it is in Table Topics because the judges get confused. And if one judge gets confused, you're sunk already. So I would encourage you to be just a little more direct in your connection because of the limited amount of time. And please remember, the written word is different from the spoken word in how it's consumed by the audience. And the message is the message received. So the brilliant Table Topics response I have in my brain doesn't connect with the audience. They don't receive that message. It's unclear because I got too clever or whatever. So that's what I would challenge as a difference from what Dennis just said.
Kieran has just clarified her question. I apparently got it wrong, just as you have just pointed out that I completely do the Table Topics wrong in contests, and I will have to remember that for the rest of my existence. Now, where she was going with that is, what can you say when you have no idea about what the answer should be to the topic? So she's saying, let me repeat that for those who missed it, as a gambit for getting around the fact that she doesn't know what to say next.
Yeah. And even a more simple one, I think a more artful response is to take that and just take the question and just turn it around into a thesis statement and say, change is the only constant, right? It's not a question, it's a topic. And you say, change is the only constant. So you've changed, you're using the same words, but you're putting different emphasis into it to say, that's my thesis statement. Or you could go, change is not the only constant, and then do your best. But remember, you're going to have to go expository if in those first 4 to 6 seconds, you can't come up with a story or you're somewhat confused. Then you're going to have to fumble along and enjoy the failure in Toastmasters, because we don't beat you up when you fail. We simply applaud. And we hope that in that experience, you get better for outside.
But what about a situation where you're introducing a question for someone, and because of your cultural ineptitude, you say he or she rather than he, as I just did with Karen? Would you, in fact, expect me to self-flagellate, or should I just move on and not pay attention to it?
Yeah, you just move on. Once again, people understand that speaking the spoken word is not as smooth as the written word, and they're looking for meaning, not necessarily word analysis. Some people will get triggered by the smallest things, but I don't think you can prepare for that. You want to be as polite as possible and include everybody as much as possible, but you're never going to be able to do that perfectly in an impromptu response.
And will you corroborate my story here that we do have someone named Kieran in our Prep Squad Club, and she is in fact a female girl person?
Yes, I can corroborate that, and I hereby testify that Dennis Dawson is accurate in his recollection.
Well, I see the red light is up, which probably means I have to stop talking, which makes me sad because I love the sound of my own voice. I think we can all give it up for Mr. Brendan Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Dawson, and thank you, Gavin, for this opportunity. Appreciate everybody.
And let me turn it back over to Mr. Gavin Wong.
Okay, thank you, Dennis, for being the Toastmaster of the day. I really enjoyed every bit of the conversation between you and Brendan and all the participants, all the communication. I think here is really scintillating and sparkling. And thanks, Brenda, for giving us, for presenting such a pithy, workshop with solid skills relating to the impromptu speech. Thank you all. And I'll put the information for the next workshop on Saturday. It's on December 5th. December 5th. Relating to what? Relating to magically connect your audience live streaming. I hope you can register here in 2 weeks because, you know, holiday is coming. And I'll see you in 2 weeks. Any other questions? Great. If not, I officially announce that this session is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. And surely you can stay here giving feedback to Brenda, to Dennis, to Izumi, to me, or to the Great Event team, because I can give the feedback to our team.
I do have a question, if I may.
Yes,
to Brendan.
Satish.
Yeah. Hey, Brendan, again, you and Dennis did a phenomenal job. Thank you very much. And Dennis, self-flagellation is always an option. All right. So Brendan, the question I had was, when I listen to a table topics question, I tend to go to check if I have a story of my own, right? Then I think about other stories that I might have heard. I mean, to me, that's the easiest place to go, which is to see if I have a story of my own that I can respond with. Maybe this is what Izumi is hinting at, I don't know, but I was thinking about that. You know, what do I do? When does that happen where I don't have an answer? When I'm just restricting myself to my story, perhaps, or stories that I know about, right? So any reaction to that? What would you say?
Yeah, the idea is to be as prepared as possible with the stories, right? So I'm going to just go a little bit long answer here to tell you my experience. One of the advantages of Toastmasters, again, is you meet so many different people. And I met a man who used to run comedy venues in the city. And he had been at it for a long time. And one of the persons who started out in his club was Robin Williams. And because he saw Robin Williams develop over time, he noticed that Robin Williams was not really an impromptu speaker. He seemed impromptu, but he worked on his material again and again in the small clubs, right? Not in front of the cameras. He would just try material, and some material worked, some material didn't, and he would rework and do that. And that practice came again and again. So over time, he developed material and he knew what he could use. And then he would go in front of an audience and come out not with a prepared set of jokes, but he would interact with the audience, and you would see somebody with a green sweater. So, oh yeah, what's your name? Oh yeah, Jana. Jana, that's a nice green sweater. That reminds me of the color of my first car. And then you would tell a 90-second or 2-minute, or maybe a 3-minute routine about his car that had already been pre-filtered, pre-selected to get laughs. He knew it would get laughs because he tried it again and again. And it seemed like, oh my God, he came up with that on the top of his head. So my response to you is, whatever you can get away with that connection, like Robin Williams, he was able to get the connection and then use his prepared material. So I'm hoping that you tell as many stories as possible, because that is, in a sense, prepared material and you're ready to go. The art that you would express is the same what Robin Williams used, was connecting the predefined material to the situation. And that's where you have to open it up and close it with the keywords somehow coming through there, and make sure that people know that you connected to the table topics. So whatever you have, whether it's your story, other stories, all that, just make sure it's connected.
and I know this sounds very trite and repetitive, but what I've noticed is the more I do table topics, the better I get of coming up with responses, right? Connecting that you're talking about. The
Yes.
more I do it, the better I get. So
yes, yeah, and it's no surprise to me. As you know, when I experienced that story about me and the burrito, you know, I was totally unprepared for anything in that meeting, and because of Toastmasters, I succeeded, and I calmed the concerns of that group who didn't like the change, and it was all because of Toastmasters. It's amazing.
thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I often find, Brendan, that if I don't know what to say after doing the magic words, I can just continue speaking.
Yes.
A lot of times, halfway through the speech, I actually figure out what it is I'm thinking. So it's a chain of consciousness, is what it is. Stream of consciousness can actually work within a club, but I'm not sure that that's ever a contest winner, as you so aptly pointed out earlier.
And if I may interrupt your blathering right now, Mr. Dawson, one thing that everybody needs to know is Dennis Dawson has a great sense of humor, oftentimes with just how he delivers standard words. And Dennis, how old were you when you started reading joke books?
I was 6 years old.
6 years old. And he started preparing for being funny way back then. And it only took him like 40 years to get to funny, but he started on that journey way back when, and it has paid off. Everybody goes, "Oh, Dennis, you're so funny." And it makes me envious because in my family, my brothers are the ones who can tell jokes and get a laugh. I'm still working on it. That's why I'm in Laugh Lovers working every other Sunday on my humor techniques, because I wasn't as brilliant as Dennis Dawson and starting to read joke books when I was 6. So that's the thing that Dennis can do. He can blather on in a table topics and get people to laugh. And if you get people to laugh, you're way ahead of the rest. So it is a technique that might work for him. But if you're not as funny as Dennis Dawson, I wouldn't try it.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments? You can speak up directly. And I'll put you under the spotlight if you speak, just like Dennis.
Great.
He's under the spotlight. How do you feel, Francois?
I'm doing okay. I've been taking notes, lots of good ideas to take upon, and I like Satish's techniques. I also added that in my notes. I apologize for the light that's coming from one way, but yeah, it's been very instructive because I love learning about table topics questions, and that's the reason why I joined Toastmasters, because I was really scared and frozen when in the hallway my boss's boss was stopping me and said, "Hey, how is the project going?" So like, fine, thank you. And I was trying to escape. So I had to learn how to build a 2-minute answer. So this gives me additional skills that I can build upon even more, and I appreciate that.
Nice.
So thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, Francois, I totally agree with you that Satish is really a Toastmaster who has solid skills, delving really, really deep in this topic. Actually, Brenda, I have a question.
Sure.
For the past 2 months, I delivered many speeches. Here is my confession. I do not have much preparation, but that doesn't mean I have absolutely no preparation. I have the emotion, a lot of different types of emotion, and I have a structure, and I do rehearsal one time, recording, use the Zoom. And my pattern here is to treat every prepared speech as a table topic speech. I just condense the information within 90 seconds. And I discovered it works. It works really well. And most of the speeches, for instance, for the past 15 speeches, I delivered them at different clubs and got a lot of feedback from many really advanced speakers. So do you have any, do you think it's workable, or do you have any recommendation for the improvement or some caveats?
Yeah. So while you were speaking, I rolled up my sleeves to hold you down while Dennis beat you up for your confession. So here's a couple of things, and it's a broader topic. I'm going to ask Dennis to jump in as well. When you do prepared speaking for outside organizations, they'll usually tell you how long you want to speak. And oftentimes they'll come up and say, oh, I know we gave you 15 minutes. Can you make it 10? And you're like, yeah, no problem. The real tough thing is going to be when you have a 10-minute speech and say, can you speak for 20 minutes? One of our speakers didn't show up. And what you just described, being able to add your impromptu 90-second material with the connecting fibers, making it like another chunk of 2 minutes, is all part of this Q&A stuff that we're doing right now. To me, it's a great experience of impromptu speaking, and it's very helpful for me to grow as a Toastmaster. So those are the types of things that you can add. I would just say that transitions are a difficult art, and Dennis is very good at this, and that's why I'm hoping he will jump in. And this is why you want to write out your speeches, to make sure the transitions and those 90-second chunks of information are a smooth connection, building a foundation. If you're doing an expository type presentation, or you're doing a series of stories, either way, you're going to need to connect it all. And that's why I'm going to turn it over to Dennis so he can continue to whip you and beat you into shape. Mr. Dawson?
Yes,
Well,
Dawson.
Thank you so much, Brendan, and let me beat Gavin into shape. Okay. Now, what you've actually just described is the kind of speech that you give when you're a division director. A lot of times people will say, hey, can you say a few words? And you'll get up and you'll give a 5 to 7 minute speech off the cuff based on what you know about Toastmasters, based on areas that you have deep knowledge. And it's a great skill to have. On the other hand, if you're going to develop the kind of speaking skills that enable you to win contests, to do TED Talks, to be asked to speak to groups of 3,000, those kinds of speeches require the extra wordsmithing that are going to give you a really outstanding turn of phrase. And that's why writing them out, but not writing them once, writing them 7, 8, 10 times, rehearsing, going down to the sentence level to fix them, that's going to get you ready for that TED Talk stage. Now, the question is, do you prepare that way when they say, hey, would you come to a TED Talk? Or do you prepare that way so that they say, would you come to a TED Talk? And the answer is B. Yeah, you don't one day have people say, hey, you're ready for a TED Talk. Okay, I'll start working on that. It's the other way around.
Okay, I get it. Okay, thank you. I really appreciate the knowledge shared by two of you. So any other questions before we conclude today's workshop? Hearing none, that's great. We pull it off. It's a really successful workshop including the content, the organization, led by Dennis and Izumi. Thank you all for being here, and happy Thanksgiving Day.